Celtic Myths and Legends by T.W. Rolleston. Chapter 2, The Religion of the Celts. Stone worship. And that's modern stone worship at Rolleston, Brittany. Besides the heavenly bodies, we find that rivers, trees, mountains, and stones were all objects of veneration among this primitive people. Well, there's certainly Catholic sites that you could consider worship of the material world, because it's certainly treated as an intercessor, some things. Stone worship was, well, other Christians too, but stone worship was particularly common and is not easily explained as worship directed towards objects possessing movement and vitality. Possibly an explanation of the veneration attaching to great and isolated masses of unhewn stone may be found in their resemblance to the artificial dolmens and cromlechs. No superstition has proved more enduring. In 452 of the Common Era, we find the Synod of Arles denouncing those who venerate trees with wells and stones, and denunciation was repeated by Charlemagne and by numerous synods and councils down to recent times. Yet, a drawing here, reproduced, which was lately made on the spot by Mr. Arthur Bell, shows this very act of worship still in full force in Brittany, and shows the symbols and the sacerdotal organization of Christianity actually pressed into the service of this immemorial paganism. Now, remember, until 1967, all monotheists were called pagan and heathen by the Catholic Church, and of course all non-Christian groups, and at times even Christian groups. Pagan and heathen by the Romans wasn't an insult. It was like, okay, yeah, it was reference to the poor or the non-Roman citizens under subjugation sometimes, but it was in terms of their houses, the thatchwork and the stuff like that. According to Mr. Bell, the clergy take part in these performances with much reluctance, but are compelled to do so by the force of local opinion. Holy wells, the water of which is supposed to cure diseases, are still very common in Ireland. And the cult of the waters of Lourdes may, in spite of its adoption by the Church, be mentioned as a notable case in point on the continent. Now, there's a difference between sacred sites and actually worshiping the material world. And we have an entrance to a tumulus at Newgrange, and okay. Small stones, crystals, and gems were, however, also venerated. The celebrated black stone at Pergamos was the subject of an embassy from Rome to the city in the time of the Second Punic War. The Sibylline books have predicted victory to its possessors. It was brought to Rome with great rejoicings in the year 205. It is stated to have been about the size of a man's fist, and was probably a meteorite. Compare the myth in Hesiod, which relates how Kronos devoured a stone, in the belief that it was his offspring, Zeus. It was then possible to mistake a stone for a god, and yeah, a lot of things were worshipped That doesn't mean that every stone or tree or whatever that has sacred import is worshipped itself. Some are treated as a charm or an intercessor, and yeah, that is worship. But sometimes you just have a sacred side.